Nice way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul. I see you. All right, John. Finish on. Coach Cole. Great job, guys.
Hey there, it's Coach Cole here, and welcome to today's Leader Podcast. Now, last week we shared the wisdom from the blue-collar leader himself, Mac Story, and in this episode, I have the absolute honor to share the story and amazing leadership from his wife, Ria. Now, Ria has a story that I know that you'll find 100% inspirational, and a story that shows that even in the darkest moments, hope can still exist. She not only escaped and survived sexual abuse, but has grown into an influential leader and a role model for many. Ria is resilience and growth personified. And once she took that courageous step to get out of the circumstances in which she was able to find and take the steps that she needed to grow. She's the author of 12 books, including her latest, Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, Become the Leader That You Are Destined to Be. If ever there was an example of accomplishment after escaping horrendous circumstances and becoming an amazing version of herself, then this interview is for you. And after a word from my sponsor, it's an absolute honor to bring you Ria Story.
The Coach Curl podcast is brought to you by Think Grow Business, the home of the Think Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
So it's my pleasure to welcome to today's Leader Podcast. Welcome, Ria Story.
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here.
And good morning to you. It's nice and early where you are, and it's sort of getting close to my bedtime where I am. So I've really been looking forward to this all day. Ria, I had the pleasure of seeing you share your story at John Maxwell's certification event back in 2014, and it was one of the most courageous stories that I've ever been witness to see someone share. So with your blessing, of course, if you could just share a little bit of your story with our listeners, just to get the ball rolling.
Sure, Tony. Thank you for your kind words. I was a victim of sexual abuse from age 12 by my father until I left home at 19. And the abuse progressed as I got older, and he got bolder. To the point by the time I was 17, he was regularly having sex with me and would bargain with me for sexual favors in exchange for something like a night out with my friends. And that was a very dark time in my life. He started trafficking me. He would arrange meetings with men he would meet off of the internet. And there were times when life was almost not worth living. He always said he wanted to give me the ultimate experience in life, and that looked like a lot of different things. Sometimes it was taking nude photographs of me. Sometimes it was tying me up and beating me black and blue with a riding crop, and then sharing me, with others. And there are times when we're going through a dark time like that, when life is just so dark and you almost don't see a way out. And I thought about it. I thought about a tub of warm water and a razor blade. And it's just when we get in a season of life like that where we don't have a lot of hope that it's really difficult to see how things are ever going to get better, right? It's difficult to imagine a better future when your present state is just terrible. And fortunately, I didn't go through with it. And at 19, I met the man who's now my husband. And he, for the first time, was the first person, number one, to ever ask if something was not right about my situation. And he gave me the courage to leave. So I left home at 19. I didn't have anything when I left home. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I'd never been to school. I'd been homeschooled at home my whole life. And I left with a couple of duffel bags and a pillowcase stuffed with some clothes. and I didn't have much, but
Yeah.
what I had was a determination that what happened to me wasn't going to hold me back the rest of my life.
Yeah. And you left at 19 with very little, as you were saying, just a couple of duffel bags. And I love the way you, in one of your talks, described meeting Mac. He was your knight in a shining Camaro or something. And since then, I guess for you to be able to be standing where you are now, you speak on stages. You're an international speaker. You've written 12 books. Um, Tell me about that journey. How did all that eventuate? So you left with nothing, and you came out of some really dark places. And, I'm sure most of the listeners are probably sitting there saying they can't imagine what you went through during that particular time. But then leaving with nothing to be where you are now is just a phenomenal story in itself. So what's been the journey since you met your knight in a shining Camaro?
Well, I started working in a pizza restaurant, waiting tables. It's the only job I could get. And I speak for a lot of high school groups and youth groups today. And I always ask the kids, I'm like, how much money do you think I was making? And they'll say, oh, $7 an hour, $10 an hour. I'm like, no, $2.13 an hour
Wow.
to pick up half-eaten pizza crusts and bust dirty tables. No, there's nothing wrong with that. I was proud to get it.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to, it didn't take long to realize I didn't want to stay there the rest of my life. So I had to start working. I went to study for my GED, which is a high school equivalency diploma here in the U.S. Then I started taking community college classes, and it took me 10 years to get done going to school and earning my degrees. And, I started working and got a better job and promoted and got a better job and just continued to push forward. But I didn't talk about what happened to me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want people to know. I didn't want people to see me as a victim. And that was very important. So I locked the past up and threw away the key. I didn't want to go back there. And, that was the method that I used to cope.
Yeah.
But that's not really healing, because what we don't talk about has power over us, right? Until I own my story, it owns me, so to speak. And in 2013, I heard Les Brown speak. And Tony, I'm sure you're familiar with Les.
Yeah.
He's a fabulous motivational speaker. And he was speaking to a room full of people, a conference room full of people. And he said, you have a story to tell, and someone needs to hear your story. And I thought, I've got a story, all right, but I don't want to tell it. I've spent many years trying to forget it, trying to pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I wrestled with that decision for 6 months, thinking, if I could share my story and help someone else realize that what happens to us in life doesn't have to define us for the rest of our life, right? We all go through adversity.
Yeah.
But it's what do we do about it that determines who we become. And so in 2013, I took that step and I shared my story publicly from the stage for the first time. And it was at a speaker training, and part of the training was a contest where the winners would be chosen and invited to speak on stage with Les Brown at a future date.
Yeah.
And after I shared my story, it didn't matter if I'd won the contest. I'd won a much bigger victory in just saying, I'm not going to let what happened to me have a hold over me. I'm not going to let it hold me back. But I did win the contest, as it turns out. And 10 days after that, I resigned from that job. I'd gone to school for 10 years and worked so hard to get. But it was the difference for me between a career and a calling.
Yeah.
I had a great job and a great organization and a great boss, and it was a great career. But I just discovered that I could reach back and help other people climb the mountain, so to speak, by sharing the lessons I learned from my journey.
And there are so many people that are grateful for you for doing that. And I watched your, just in prep for our interview today, I watched that Stage Time event back in 2014, and then with the John Maxwell certification. And then I watched your TED Talk, and just to see your progression as a speaker has been quite it's interesting. The dynamic between both of those two conversations is really quite different. You in the TED Talk, and I think that the TED Talk was only relatively recent in the last couple of years. And there's like this strength of confidence around your story now, which I found absolutely empowering. And one of the quotes that came out of that TED Talk is something that you've already sort of touched on. And resilience is about building a bridge from the past instead of building a wall around it. So I can understand just on what you said where that comes from, because so many people have something bad happen to them or what we perceive at the time to be bad. When we talk about, potentially this calamity scale, a lot of the bad stuff that happens to people is really fundamentally not necessarily a bad thing, but we do tend to build a wall around it. To our own perspective, it's a bad thing. And then we try and dig it away. So how do you help people in understanding that concept is the building the bridge instead of building a wall?
Sure, that's a good question. I think first fundamentally, it's important to realize that we always, as human beings, we always have a choice in how we respond to any circumstances. And that was powerful for me because for so long I learned to just cope with what happened to me.
Yeah.
But that's not really responding proactively. It's just surviving. It's just pretending it doesn't exist. And we can't heal from something until we're willing to acknowledge it, right?
Yeah.
And if it's still a wound and it's still there, it's still going to hurt us. It's only when it becomes a scar that it makes us stronger. And that's a process I think everyone gets to a little bit differently. But the first step for anyone is realizing I have a choice in how I face this and how I accept this. I can go through it as a victim and use it as an excuse, or I can go through it saying, you know what, it's bad, it's terrible, it hurts, it's painful. And we're human. Those are normal emotions. But it's Andy Stanley who said, our emotions are terrible leaders, right? We have the emotions and they're there. I don't want to discount that at all. But we don't have to let those emotions rule our thoughts and behaviors and actions, and ultimately our choices and circumstances in life.
Yeah, it's that whole concept, or that emotion, that ability for us to choose our response to that.
Absolutely.
So, and so many people lead their life with so much emotion that they just get caught up in this natural, or what they see as their natural way of doing things, but then they're missing out on that intentional aspect of making that choice. The other thing that really caught my eye during your TED Talk, or caught my ear, I should say, was resilience is rising from the ashes from what happens to us in life, and for us burning brighter because of the flames. Now, forgive me for saying this, but Katy Perry needs to write a song about that. So that is such a powerful quote. So talk me through where that came from, because that's got power in it.
I like to use that analogy because my story is unfortunately not that uncommon, but it's not everybody's story, and I recognize that. But every single one of us as humans, as leaders, go through challenges and face adversity and obstacles. It's a fact. It's just life that we're going to go through hardship and face adversity. And that absolutely affects us and it influences us. I don't want to discount that, because when you're going through something, it's tough. It's tough to go through that and recognize that it's hard, it's difficult. But the beautiful thing is that how it influences us is up to us. In taking my story and acknowledging it and owning it, it doesn't own me any longer. And there's no doubt I'm a different person today because of what I went through. I mean, that absolutely has influenced me in so many ways. But in 2013, I made the decision that it was going to refine me and not define me. And I think that's important, because adversity shapes us and influences us, and it affects us. but it's up to us to say, you know what, because of what happened, I'm stronger, I'm better, I've learned something. And that's where we burn brighter because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I always share with people that where we are today, we're stronger, we're braver, and we're wiser. And sometimes we just don't give ourselves credit for that, because where we are today is we've got through every one of our bad days. Every one of our bad days, because we're still standing, and we're standing stronger, we're standing braver, and we're standing wiser. So share with me how you work with your clients. So do you work predominantly within groups, or with teams, or with presentations, or from a public speaking platform, or do you still do work one-on-one individually?
Most of what I do today is speaking from the stage or in organizations and conferences, and writing. That's really where, I absolutely love coaching and working one-on-one, but I realize that it's limiting in terms of I can only reach so many people that way. And so speaking and then writing books is a way to reach more people with the message. And I think that's really where my strength is, and just being able to touch people and just inspire them. I want to be that inspiration that says bad things happen, yes, but they don't have to hold us back. And what happens to us isn't as important as what we do about it, who we become because of it. I do focus most of my work towards women, just because I think that's really where my niche is. I think women, and maybe this isn't true, but it's my perspective, that women tend to take adversity or trauma or hardships, and we tend to make that a bit of our identity, and that limits us. And maybe that's not universal for men. Maybe it is universal for men and women, but I just really feel my niche is helping women own that and then form their own identity, and then go on to reach their potential.
Excellent. So you've written a number of books, and your predominant focus with your books is in and around that leadership for women. And the area that you specialize in, is that predominantly resilience, or is it just a broad-based concept of female leadership?
I really like to talk about leadership of self.
Okay.
And because that's the foundation of our influence and our leadership of other people. So whether we call it personal growth or leadership for women or personal development, it's the same principles of I've got to lead me first before I can lead other people effectively. And we don't talk about that a lot in our world today, in different cultures. We talk a lot about competencies, and we talk a lot about skills and learning math or English or technical abilities, and those are important skills. But we don't teach and talk about the characteristics and the principles for personal growth and success. Those are the things that contribute toward the majority of our influence in life, our success. It's attitude, it's integrity, it's how do I manage my temper? Those are the things that hold us back or launch us. But we don't teach those, and until we're teaching those, we're never going to be able to help our young people learn to develop those characteristics.
Yeah. So when we're talking about, say, leadership characteristics, you mentioned a couple there. Has that predominant, in your observations, has that changed with what we expected from leaders in the past? So a leader of today, is that a new skill set that we're talking about, or is it similar to what we sort of saw in the leaders of the past?
I think the principles themselves are timeless. The characteristics that contribute to great leadership 200 years ago are still relevant today. I don't think we focus on them. I don't think we emphasize on them like we have in the past. But I think, the characteristics that make great leaders are timeless. That leaders, first off, they have to be proactive. We do have to be able to manage emotions in the moment and respond positively and proactively. Leaders have to be able to do that and set the example for others, because no one wants to lead, or no one wants to follow a leader who's not able to lead themselves. It doesn't inspire great action on the part of anyone, I think.
Yeah.
We don't really emphasize. I think it's just in the last several decades or 50 years maybe that we've moved away from just a focus on developing character.
Yeah. And character is absolutely critical for any sort of a leader, just to have that foundation of, I always used to talk when I was in the corporate world that leaders are on show every day. So the way I showed up and the way that I led and the way that I behaved was the role model for my team, whichever team that was going to be. And if I couldn't understand that, or if I couldn't get my leadership team to understand that, I knew that I was going to be in some trouble. So we needed to be consistent, and we need to be that leader that was always on show, because that is ultimately where culture and performance all comes from, because the leader, as we know, sets the standard. So
Absolutely.
So who's inspired you in your leadership journey?
My husband Mac obviously has had a huge impact on me and an inspiration.
That speeding
And
locomotion that's Mac.
Yes. And part of that is because I've seen him grow so much in his leadership ability, and there's obviously we speak together a lot of the times. We are working together, we travel together, and we joke about it. But when you live, work, and travel with someone, you really have to go way beyond loving them. You actually have to like them, because we spend an inordinate amount of time together.
Yeah.
But he has been an incredible inspiration to me, just because he has overcome, so many of his, so many of his own challenges and gotten out of his own way, so to speak. But there are so many great leaders. I find more inspiration from someone like Nick Vujicic, for example, who's, to me, I once heard Nick say that he is grateful to have been born with no arms and no legs. And that was pretty profound for me, because for many years I wasn't grateful for what happened to me. I learned to get along with it, but it was a long time before I could say I'm grateful for what happened. It's a bad thing and it's terrible, but I'm grateful for what I've been able to learn through it and how I can now use it in a positive way to inspire others. And so Nick always inspires me, because I think he's done that very well, in saying, I can't change my circumstances, but I can change me. And that inspires people all over the world. And so leaders like that are incredible examples. I think we can learn so much from them.
I remember seeing Nick at the 2014 certification event for John Maxwell, and just that initial story where he made that commitment that he was going to commit suicide in the bath, and just him actually going through the motions of what he was doing. I'm just sitting there just going, it just tears you apart to think that was where he was. And then he started working through that process of really, who was this going to hurt? Because ultimately his pain was going to be no more. But then he started thinking about all those people that he cared about. And that's what started to get him out of that particular mode. So it's a real case of, and he inspires millions of people around the world every day. So, to go through that resilience, come out of it stronger. And it's exactly like yourself, to be burning brighter, stronger, and sharing those stories to give other people hope and inspiration that what has happened to them is there is a way forward. There is hope. There is an opportunity to step in to not just today, but tomorrow. And I think that's powerful. So it doesn't surprise me that you were inspired by someone like Nick. So
great examples. And, John Maxwell has been very impactful in my leadership of other people developments, just because his material is relevant and easier to kind of dig into, so to speak. Andy Stanley, I think, is another leader who has just set an example of learning to overcome his own self and improve his leadership style. There are so many, and then there are people who we don't always think of as leaders, but Mother Teresa, has impacted millions of people all over the world, still does. And we don't think about people like her necessarily, because she wasn't a world leader or, a leader of a big corporation, a CEO, but look at the leadership qualities that she modeled and the impact. And I think there's lessons to be learned from that.
It's always interesting when I'm talking with a group, Ria, and I ask them who's inspired them as a leader. And often the leaders are like the Mother Teresas or the Gandhis of the world, or, other people like that. Nelson Mandela comes up quite often. Now, in many cases, these people don't have official titles. It's not like Mother Teresa gave herself a leadership title. She was just Mother Teresa, and she served. And, so many people see the inspiration of that, but then a lot of people say, well, I'm not a leader, I'm not a manager, I can't lead people. Yet some of the examples that they're using are of these amazing people who don't have a title that lead amazingly.
Absolutely. And you're right. I think we often think of leadership is for the boss or the owner or the CEO, the leader of a country or president. And those people need leadership, but you and I need leadership, right? We because if leadership is influence, we don't want to just lead people of countries. We want to lead our kids to make better choices in life. We want to influence our friends, our family, our spouse, because the world gets better when our influence increases, right? We get more influence, life gets better. We get more options, we get more opportunities. Our relationships are improved personally and professionally. Our world expands. And yet, most of the time, we don't stop to think about the choices that we make as individuals are what determines our influence. And then it's taking ownership of that and responsibility for it is the first step to increasing it.
And another little thing that I see, and I've got no doubt that you see sometimes when I'm working with teams, then there may be a leader in title, but then you understand where the influence in that team sits, and often it's certainly not with the person that's got the title. So that's a challenge for those particular leaders. How do they bend or borrow or invest in to get that influence coming through? So you've had so since you and Mac set up your business, and Mac was sharing the story with me recently in relation to, he went from a dollar figure salary down to zilch, and then he loved it so much that you wanted to join him. So I thought that was quite an amazing little story. But since you've been in business together, how do you deal with those inevitable troughs that come along in that journey? So one day we're flying high, the next day we're sort of saying, oh my God, I should never have done this. So how do you deal with that?
I think on two levels. Number one, when the wonderful thing about what we do is we've been able to do it together but separately. He focuses more on blue collar, I focus a little more on leadership for women, but we often speak together because the principles are universal. They apply, and so we're able to share that experience. And it's fun to transition this journey together, right? We were willing to both go all in 100%. And Mac used to say, I'm so committed to this journey, I would go live under a bridge in order to do that. And I would say, I'm not willing to go quite that far. So we got to figure this out before we get to the bridge stage. But, we were in a position where both of us were committed to it. We both understood the sacrifices that would be, and there were some sacrifices. There were some ramen noodle months. Learning to transition. We were both very successful in our careers, but to transition to a leadership, speaking, and writing platform is a tough step. And we both jumped off the cliff to do it, so to speak. But we were able to do it together, and that's been powerful because when the troughs come, we've been able to lift each other up and synergize and build off of that. And so that's powerful. And I don't take that for granted. And then personally, I think, it's when we are in those low times, I love the concept of pre-traumatic growth. And I forget where I first heard the term. It's been a long time. Because we've heard the term post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic this, but the concept of pre-traumatic growth is saying, you know what, in the future, I'm going to face challenges. I'm going to face adversity. If I grow and develop myself before I get to those challenges, I'm better equipped to face them and overcome them when they happen. And I think that's especially important for leaders. And because a lot of times in our leadership journey, when things are going well, is the time that we want to coast or step back or take a deep breath.
Yeah.
But we need to keep a focus and an emphasis on growing and growth and development,
Yeah.
because hard times are coming. And I know the troughs are coming. And so I've got to be able to equip myself and my mindset before I get there. And that will help us be more effective.
It's like building muscle. You want to build
It
muscle
is.
before you need to use it.
Yes.
So you want to create the discomfort that creates the change. And I guess COVID has done that so well for so many people and business leaders. COVID has created that forced change. And I don't know in your network, but I know in my network, we've seen a lot of businesses having to radically innovate things that they probably had on their little to-do list for 5 years as part of a 5-year plan or something, and then all of a sudden being forced into that because they certainly had no income coming through. So
Absolutely. Think how it's affected, our education. I know here in the U.S., so many schools overnight were asked to move education in the classroom to Zoom and a virtual platform. And that's not just with college students. That's with, fourth graders and kindergartners. And that caused parents to have to just radically change. And you think of so many ways that COVID has impacted us. But what's interesting is we see those people who were committed to growth and development who are able to make those changes more successfully now, right? They're able to respond quicker. And there will be some who don't come out of this. Their business doesn't come out successfully. And that's sad, but it's also an opportunity for them to learn from it and say, well, what do I need to do differently next time?
Yeah, but I've been working with a number of businesses here on just shifting their business models or doing some additional or creating some additional revenue streams. So it's been really interesting with that. And one of the key words they used over here from a federal government perspective was the word of hibernation. So when they first started putting states into lockdown here, they talked about hibernation. They talked about businesses going to sleep, and then one day we're going to come along and wake you up and everything's going to be fine again. Now, the reality is that hibernation was probably the worst word to use in my mind, because businesses, I know I certainly did to an extent. I know businesses that are coming out of it now really strongly are the ones that took the opportunity to reset and look at everything in relation to their business model or their own career perspective and actually get some things happening. So I had some really great leadership masterminds during COVID because there was a number of leaders that said, I need to take this time to do things better and lead through crisis and understand that relationship between emotions and response and how I can actually be a positive and proactive a leader for my now remote team. So it was really interesting. So share with me Boston Marathon. Now I know you run marathons, and I know that when I was looking at your About Us page on your website today, all of these exercises that you've got in your history, but you've qualified for Boston, and Boston is the hardest marathon to qualify for. So tell me about your marathon journey.
I was one of those people who was not naturally gifted as an athlete, and a large part of my journey is that growing up, I wasn't empowered athletically. My dad was, obviously sexually abusive, but also psychologically in a lot of ways, and would joke about my poor athleticism and make fun of me. And I almost adopted that mindset as I'm just not good at athletics. And it kind of held me back for a long time until I started going to the gym and just doing group fitness. And then I started teaching group fitness. And it was really empowering for me to take that step, because what it challenged me to do or empowered me to do is grow physically, right? And
Yeah.
just my ability and to grow and develop myself. And so I realized that maybe I wasn't the natural gifted runner, but I could improve as a runner. And so I started running. I had to get a coach to help me start running. I ran my first marathon and it took me more than 5 hours. It was just, I had no clue what I was doing, which is probably a good thing because I
Yeah.
wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
And that was in 2011. And then I would run for a while and then I would put it down and do other things. And then I would pick running back up. And then a couple of years ago, I stopped teaching group fitness really as we started doing more speaking and traveling. It was a season that had to end. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to figure out a little more. I'm going to dedicate this energy toward my running for my own health. It's also very therapeutic for me and a way to grow physically and challenge myself.
Yeah.
And so I just started working towards that. And last year it was just an incredible experience to even try and think I could qualify for the Boston Marathon. And so I qualified for 2021, which would be in April of next year. So maybe the whole pandemic thing will settle down before then, hopefully. It's just, one of the things I love about running is that it challenges us at any level, right? It never gets easy. You just work harder and go faster. But I think anytime we attempt something in any dimension of life, physical, mental, when we grow in one area of life, it helps us in so many ways in the other areas. I find discipline through running. It's helped me develop so many great skills that apply to other areas of life. Perseverance. There's nothing like perseverance at mile 23 and you got 3 more miles to go, and a well-meaning volunteer says you're almost there, and you think, oh, I'm not almost there. Right, but perseverance is a skill set we need in life, and we can develop those things.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife and I run marathons, or when I say run marathons, we enjoy our marathon experience, I should say. I wouldn't say we're runners. We're sort of at the back of the field enjoying our times. But
that's powerful too, though. Remember, it is something to enjoy. I love that.
It's 42K. It's 26 miles. We did the New York Marathon back in 2018, and one of if anyone in the listening audience is thinking about running marathons, do not do New York as your first marathon because it ruins you for every marathon after that. It is such an amazing experience. And then last year we backed it up and we did the Melbourne Marathon here in Australia. Mm-hmm. And so we're used to having we would think that every marathon's got scores of people on either side cheering you on and having a great time. And you're running Melbourne and the streets are empty and you're looking around and you go, oh, and that was tough. That was a tough one. So I certainly understand that once you've done a couple, you're just hooked, aren't you? You're addicted to it. It's just such a physical test that continues to, and it's just so fulfilling when you cross that finish line. So,
it is. Absolutely.
So you talked about your time being 5 hours. We were 6 hours with our first one in New York, but that was the best 6 hours of my life. So it was awesome.
It is, and you cross that finish line and you think, I've accomplished something many people wouldn't even try, and it's incredibly rewarding. It's
such a small percentage of people that have ever completed a marathon. And one of the things that I still get a bit choked up when I think about the New York Marathon is we had friends back here in Australia that were following us via the New York Marathon app. So as we're coming into Central Park for the last time, there were text messages coming through from and we're just going, wow, look at this. It was just amazing. So and as we crossed the line, we sort of had our coach and remedial massages. She did the marathon in something like 3 hours 3 years before, so she's like a natural runner. But the first message we got as we crossed the line was from her, so it was amazing.
Mm,
So,
that's awesome.
so share with me now just your vision going forward. So we're coming towards the end here, Ria. We've been talking for just a little bit under 40 minutes, I think. So what's the vision for you going forward?
Uh, the vision of going forward, I really want to expand, I think, a little bit. My most recent book is Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, and they're again talking about the transformation of where in my journey I came from that just broken 19-year-old who had nothing to where I am today. And when I look at that transformation, what are the steps that I walked through, and then being able to expand that to more women. This book has been on my radar for a while, and at the beginning of March, I realized I'd been using our travel and speaking and busyness to as an excuse to put off writing this book. And so I thought, you know what, even if I have to take my laptop everywhere I go, I need to write this book. It's just been pressing on my heart. And then COVID happened and the world shut down for several months, and suddenly I had plenty of time. And so I've been able to finish this book and complete it. And so now I'm excited to really, expand on that, because that's what I have to give is being able to help other people walk through that journey. Because whoever we are, whatever we want to do, there's going to be a transformation, because we have to become the person who can accomplish what we want to accomplish. And that's transformation at some level. Whether we want to just start from going to the couch to running a marathon, that's transformative, Whatever our goals and dreams are, there's a transformation that's got to take place to achieve them, or they're not worth going for, they're not big goals and dreams. So that's where I see the future. It's exciting, because I'm ready to just help other people walk through that journey.
Yeah. So Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, is that, and that comes with a workbook, I see.
It does. The book itself has some worksheets, but the workbook is for those who want a deeper dive and to go a little further or a little faster.
Excellent. So out of everything that you have accomplished, and can I say you've accomplished a lot, what's the one thing that you're most proud of?
That's a tough question. If a highlight this year has been speaking at the U.S. Capitol, and not because it was something that I accomplished so much as that when I recognize who I had to become to get to be able to even get an invitation like that and to be there. When I look back at what I'm most proud of is just overcoming myself. And by that, I mean, again, we all have things happen, and it's so easy, and I'm good at it. I'm still good at it. It's using anything as an excuse for why I can't do something, right? And it's easy to blame other people because there's only one other choice. But we can't control what happens to us, but it's always ultimate freedom in realizing that I can control me. And the choices that I make today are going to determine who I'm going to be tomorrow, where I'm going to be tomorrow, right? And so I've had to overcome my choices, that maybe they weren't bad choices necessarily, but a lot of times we make choices that don't serve us and our dreams. Yeah. And I'm proud of being able to look at that and say, you know what, I'm going to make better choices today so that I can create my tomorrow.
So you've spoken at Yale, you've spoken at the US Capitol. Is there like a sense of disbelief with those sorts of aspects of what you've done? And do you suffer from what so many people suffer from, that thing called the imposter syndrome? Do you ever question yourself around some of these things that have happened?
There is a sense of disbelief and just gratitude, I think, for me. Because I never would have imagined that I could be here, For me, if you had asked me 10 years ago what success looked like, it would have been retiring at that job that I had that I was happy with and proud to get. And I planned to retire from that organization. I'd worked really hard to get there. I was going to be there for the rest of my life. And so not so much a sense of imposter syndrome. That's not as big a challenge for me as just, I think all of us have to face complacency, right? We
Yeah.
have to make sure that we are not coasting, right? Not stopping where I am today and saying, oh, I've arrived. It's not about that. It's continuing to grow, because it is more about a journey than a destination. We never get there. And I
Yeah.
think that's the mindset. Mac often says, remember to be always grateful, but never satisfied. Always grateful for what we have and where we are, but not satisfied to stop growing.
Yeah.
Don't coast, don't settle, because there's so much more of our potential as leaders, as people.
Yeah.
And we can only satisfy that. We can only reach that if we're continuing to grow and develop. And I think that's a danger for most of us, probably.
Yeah. And that sense of gratitude is something that serves you really, really well. So, and as you were talking, I was thinking about a quote that I sort of keep close and I pull out quite often. There's a gentleman called Freddie Pataccio who was on the World Surfing League, and Freddie was one of those guys that never quite hit that world champion status. He was in the fight a couple of years, but he was never like at that Kelly Slater sort of level. And on his retirement, he was being interviewed, and I was watching it live, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, some people may say that I'm giving up on my dream, but I've been living my dream. And to me, that's, once again, just one of those powerful things. He never necessarily hit that goal that he wanted, which was to be the world champion. But the journey for him, being part of that process and aiming for that, was his dream. So he's lived his dream. So I thought that there's some real power in that, because so many people, that journey is the story. The journey is the success in so many ways. So.
That's powerful. And so many people I know are not happy with their job or their relationships or their health. And it's important to it's one of the things I love to talk about. And I think I've said it already, but it's so important to realize that, I think it's Hal Elrod that said, the moment we take responsibility for everything is the moment we can change anything. Right. And so it's important to recognize our power in creating the life we want and living the life we want and being the leader we want to be. It really comes down to choices, big and small, that we make every single day. And so many of the times our choices, our habits, our actions that we don't even think about a lot of times. But the more we can just examine those and say, are they just serving me well and where I want to go?
Yeah.
And, I'm not talking about changing everything in your life today, but sometimes if we just say, you know what's one thing I can do today to be better today? I like to talk about the power of consistency and the power of small choices. If I can just do one thing better today, that's going to help me run better, when I go train, right? What I can eat a salad instead of a hamburger. So think about just, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just looking for one thing. Michael Josephson said, you don't have to be sick to get better. And I love that, because there's nothing wrong with us, but we can always get better.
Absolutely. It's been a wonderful conversation. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you, Ria?
You had some really great questions, and I really enjoyed our conversation, Tony. There again, I always come back to our greatest freedom is choosing how to respond to what happens to us. And we touched on that, but I like to emphasize it again, because it's been the key for me in overcoming what I went through, and not just overcoming it, but using it to turn it into something positive and help others.
Yeah.
And not everyone feels called to do that, or certainly do that publicly from the stage or write books. But our greatest joy in life is really reaching back to help someone else, right? It's the difference between success for myself and significance in the life of someone else. And that's powerful when we find that what we've learned on our journey can help someone else. And that's where we find fulfillment, I think, in life as leaders.
Well, you've certainly made an impact on our discussion today. How can people connect with you?
You can find me LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just search for Ria Story, or you can just go to my website, riastory.com. So RIASTORY.com.
Excellent. Ria, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy your day. I hope it started well, so let's hope it continues and it finishes well.
Absolutely, Tony. Thank you so much.
Join the group of people impacted by seriously simple stuff to get you unstuck. The first book by Tony Coach Curl. Available at Amazon, Tony's Simple Stuff provides the tool for people to master your life and aspirations. 20% of every book sold supports Carter's cause.
Now, that was an inspiring story, and I'm inspired by both Ria and Mac in their journey and their quest and their calling to help as many people as possible. And Ria's story, as you can imagine, inspires so many people on a daily basis. She shares her story with many, inspiring women that have escaped the world of sex trafficking, female leaders at all levels, and CEOs and company leaders. Now, some of the key takeaways, and there were many, was the simple message that she had initially locked the past away and threw away the key. But then she thought, and then she was reminded that what we don't talk about has power over us. What we don't talk about has power over us. And then she said, if I don't own my story, it owns me. Now, they're powerful statements. But many, unfortunately, in our world are defined by our past and incidents, circumstances that have occurred, which they lock away, never to discuss, never to mention, but funnily enough, constantly on our minds. Having a negative past and allowing that to have hold over you diminishes the power and the potential that you can have today. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are who you are. And the strength that you can draw from the pain of the past edges you closer to your best. The pain of the past strengthens you to be your best. Now, victories come in all shapes and sizes. Every day working on you, being called to a greater purpose, inspiring others to climb their mountains, to hit their peaks, and using the troughs to build powerful resilience. Now, Ria is a powerful leader, and I just want to share the quotes again from her TED Talk. Resilience is rising from the ashes from what happens to us in life and burning brighter because of the flames. Now that's powerful. The second one is resilience is about building a bridge from the past instead of building a wall around it. Now, next time that you're struggling to see a way through, remember those key statements. Burn brighter, build that bridge, and that's how you can make the best out of the pain of your past. In today's disruptive world, good leadership skills will always stand you in great stead. If you're looking to build better leadership skills, consider our sponsors, Think and Grow Business and the Coach Curl Academy. Think and Grow Business is the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind, where we focus on personal, professional and business growth. Book in your free 30-minute discovery call at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au. And don't forget the Coach Curl Academy. We now have over 75 programs to help you build a better you. Join for just $1 for the first month. Yes, that's right, just $1. The academy that equips you, enhances mindset, leadership, and your business skills. Check it out at the Coach Curl Academy. Today, we are reminded that you are standing stronger, braver, and wiser. And don't ever forget the golden rule. Yes, you know what that is. Just don't be an arsehole. I'll see you next time.